we've talked a lot about the unfortunate shift of the Joe Rogan experience as a show, as a platform, and Joe Rogan as an individual. He had he had kind of this bizarre shift, particularly during COVID, and changed his kind of stance on some things, but then also just got really deeply ingrained into the anti-vax type mindset and really doesn't like any of the lockdowns that happened. Okay, but I think what that did was isolate him into a right-wing space that then fed him other kind of information. And I do think he's a pretty impressionable. And here we sit today. But he absolutely took the correct stance and eviscerated Matt Walsh in a beautiful fashion over the topic of gay marriage. It is wonderful to see somebody who does have sway on the right among a lot of people who probably don't support gay marriage clearly and effectively argue for the correct side of this issue. It's gonna be a longer clip than I particularly or usually play. You'll see 14 minutes. I'm not playing all 14 minutes, but I will show a little bit more of this than usual because a lot of it is awesome. Again, this is Joe Rogan chatting with right-winger and bizarre individual Matt Walsh.
I think of marriage is a certain thing, which is the context for procreation, for the building of the nuclear family.
What about people that get married that don't have kids? Are you opposed to that? What if they get married that just...
So he centers his entire definition of marriage around procreation, which many marriages do also involve reproducing, having kids, building a family, and that's beautiful. And I do think marriage serves a purpose in strengthening that kind of reality. But if you center your entire definition of a marriage and say that certain types of marriages are wrong or shouldn't be allowed because this is the purpose of marriage, then naturally, as Joe Rogan's going to do here, you ask, even before getting to the conversation around gay marriage, what about straight couples that don't reproduce? Is that wrong? Should that be outlawed? Take a look.
Decide, you know what, we don't need kids. I'm going to get fixed. You get your tubes tied. Let's travel the world.
Well, what do you mean am I opposed to it? I mean, I think that every married couple should be open to life.
But what if they don't want to? Are you opposed to them being married? If marriage is only for procreation and to bond a family together, what about people that are deeply in love that never want to have children?
I don't think it's not only procreation, but that is one of the fundamental definitional aspects of it. Of course, there's more to marriage just than that.
And what about people that are infertile? They fall in love and they realize that they can have babies and they don't really necessarily want to adopt. Is that okay for them to be married? Because then by definition, marriage falls into a completely different thing, because then it's a bond of love. It's a union of love.
Sure. I mean, that doesn't change the nature of marriage, though. It's a little bit like I say that what's the definition of a woman? Well, a woman is someone who by her nature can conceive children in her womb and bear children. And then the response is always, well, what about women who are infertile? Does that destroy your definition of woman?
Yes, it does. It does. You figured it out, Matt. You've been confused. You did a whole documentary. You can't understand the subject. It does. That's the point people are making. If you say the one factor that makes a woman is her being able to reproduce, then people are going to pose to you, some women don't reproduce. Are you saying that they're not women? And he goes, nah, but it's in their nature. The bleep does that mean? It's in their nature. Yeah, most women can reproduce. Doesn't mean that women who can't aren't women, right? And that's where you have to have a larger discussion about, we can understand the scientific, biological reality of coming into the world, a biological female, biological male, while also recognizing that we've built on top of that a very nuanced and intricate identity that is man, that is woman, and that is why it is perfectly within all of the logical structure you could build to be incredibly supportive where he goes after them is trans people. That's why he wants to, women is if you can reproduce, and trans, women can't reproduce. And that's why he obsesses over this, when we're saying, no, we get that there's biological females, but also there's all of this other interesting, constructs and stuff we've built, and you're having a hard time understanding that. That's your lack of knowledge that I feel so bad for, Matt. But it's hilarious because he uses that in this moment as proof for why he's not wrong about the gay marriage discussion, or right now about the straight couples who don't reproduce. And he's saying it's in their nature to reproduce, even if they don't. Like, it's in a woman's nature to be able to get pregnant, even if she doesn't. And just perfectly proves to the world and to himself that exactly, you're wrong on both. You know how my one definition over there is bad? That's why it's okay for my definition over here to be bad. Nice.
And it doesn't, because it's still a woman's nature to bear children. Not every woman will, and there will be disease and infertility and old age and all these things that will preclude that. But it's still of her nature to do so. And I would say the same thing for marriage. I mean, it is natural in a marriage for procreation to occur. It's not always going to happen in reality, though, but that's still one of the natural.
And that's the other words, natural. They obsess over natural without understanding. Marriage is not natural. Natural, you're trying to appeal to nature. Reproduction is natural, but it's so strange that something we've built as a society, being marriage, gets brought into the natural. We just built this institution, we call it marriage, to legally recognize the union of two people. And so it is perfectly great for people to partake in that societal institution in more ways than just what does drive the continuation of society, which is reproduction. But not being able to expand your brain beyond like two dogs humping is really a bummer for some of these right-wingers.
Functions of marriage, and married couples who can't conceive children. There are other ways to be parents, like adoption, for example.
If they want to. Right, sure. But if people want to be married and don't want to ever have children, are you opposed to them being married?
Well, I wouldn't advocate a law that would prevent it.
But would it change the definition of what their marriage is to you because they don't want to have a family? They just want to have a loving bond?
Yes, it would.
I think this would be a couple that is rejecting one of the fundamental aspects of marriage, and that they should be open to life. I would hope that in the future they would be, but
isn't that just a personal choice? I mean, you can have a very fulfilling life if you just follow your pursuits and your dreams and your interests, and you find someone that shares those interests with you, and you share time together. It's very fulfilling and loving.
Yeah, it's a personal choice, and that I'm not advocating for like a law that says that you if you're married you have to have X number of kids.
But then why are you opposed to two gay people doing that?
Well, because again, it's not about choice. It's about what this institution, marriage is an institution, and what is it, and what purpose does it serve? And I do not agree with.
Wait, dude. He will not bite the bullet and say, yes, I think it should be illegal for people to get married without pumping out babies. Like, he can't get himself to say that because he knows it sounds so bonkers to say, I think infertile people should be not allowed to get married unless they commit to adopting or something, right? But then if you aren't willing to commit to that, when you flip it to gay marriage, you have no argument. The only way you could have a principled argument, I guess, from his perspective, is to just say, yep, I think gay marriage should be banned. I think anyone who's not willing to adopt and is infertile should be banned. I think anyone who just wants to get married and travel the world with each other and doesn't want to have kids should be banned. But he won't do that. And so then he's just in this really icky, unprincipled world, like on a lot of issues with Matt Walsh.
Tearing down or changing this definition, especially because the people who have changed the definition haven't come up with a new one. So they say, well, that's not what marriage is. So for thousands of years, we said marriage is the procreative union. And then we had the other side who came along and said, well, it's not that. Okay, well then, like, what is it exactly? And I know you said, well, it's people who love each other. Two people love each other. Well, but then why two people? Why do they have to love each other? All these kinds of questions. You get into what if they're in the same family? What if brothers and sisters want to marry? And I know every time that comes up, the advocates for gay marriage will say, well, that's a slippery slope argument. That's a fallacious. But it's actually not. It's like we're trying to get to.
He does it again. He argues against himself and proves why he's wrong. Because yes, it's perfectly societally functional to say, a marriage is a union between two people as a representation of their commitment and love or whatever. And so then falling within that can be gay marriages, falling within that can be procreative unions, as he cares the most about, or straight couples who don't want to have kids but want to be married, whatever. And for him to be able to argue against himself, pose all the arguments that prove him wrong, and then flip back to, but I'm still right, is quite strange. We'll stop it there. But I would encourage you to go watch this full clip. It's so beautiful because all he'll do is just go in circles. No, Joe, I got you. No, you're exactly right. It's not all marriages that are built around reproducing, but I think it should be. So you think it should be banned to not get married if you're not going to have kids? Well, no. Because I get that not all marriages will fall within that, but they should. So then gay marriages are fine. No. Because those don't fall in with procreation, but neither do and then we go on and on and on. I was watching it, enjoying it because Matt Walsh looked so silly, but also getting a little bit mentally disturbed at the circles that were happening. But I was glad that a lot of people don't like that tension in a conversation where you just circle and circle and circle, and we'll go, okay, I guess we've hit a stopping point. Agree to disagree. I hate that phrase. I'll agree to know that you're wrong. Just kidding. But sometimes you should just calmly continue to go, because minute after minute that happens, one more Joe Rogan viewer or listener goes, wait, why does Matt Walsh sound so illogical right now? And maybe changes their view, or not, because the hate for LGBTQ people is so powerful and holds people so strongly to their bizarre beliefs. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before any of the clips are uploaded to YouTube, plus get access to an extra full show every Saturday that only members can see, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Luke Beasley. That's patreon.com/Luke Beasley, and there is a link in the description.